There are moments in life when just 1 second is enough to change everything forever. For Daniel Kowalski, that moment came on a warm Thursday morning in San Diego, when, as he was wiping grease from his calloused hands, he heard the engine of a luxury car purr outside his old garage. The sound was smooth, expensive, and completely out of place in the working-class neighborhood he had been tied to his entire life. For Sienna Donovan, the 19-year-old girl who had lost 11 years of her youth to a wheelchair, the moment that changed everything arrived quietly. It was the strange sensation of her foot touching the ground without pain, for the first time since the fateful accident when she was only 8 years old. No applause, no fireworks, just a trembling breath, and something she had once believed would never happen. But before the miracle appeared, there had been tragedy. There had been despair. There had been countless sleepless nights when one wonders whether the kindness of an ordinary person could possibly stand against a cold, unyielding system, one where millions of dollars had already proven powerless. This is the story of a single father living on the margins of society, of a female billionaire carrying the guilt of a mother, and of a brave young girl who had grown accustomed to being told, "Accept your fate." This is the story of how a poor mechanic accomplished something that money, fame, and luxurious clinics could never buy. And it all began with a very simple question. Is your brace too tight? But before that question was ever asked, let me tell you about a man no one paid attention to. Danny was not always a single father living in an old garage. When he was younger, he dreamed of becoming an aerospace engineer, just like Miguel. The two brothers used to sit on the roof of their house, watching airplanes take off from San Diego International Airport, sketching naive designs of jet engines and airplane wings. But when his wife, Elena, passed away after giving birth to Zoe, every plan fell apart. On the night of the funeral, Danny sat holding his newborn daughter, staring at his high school diploma and the acceptance letter from UC San Diego lying on the table. He knew he had to choose. He dropped out in his second year of college and returned to work at the small garage, once his father's workshop, before his father died of a heart attack when Danny was 18. Every afternoon, while Zoe napped, Danny opened old books on mechanics, not because he hoped to return to school, but because he believed that knowledge, even self-taught, even without a degree, could still change someone's life. He had no idea that belief would be tested so soon, and he never imagined that that someone would appear on an ordinary Thursday morning, pulling him into a journey he would never forget. Before we go any further, let me ask you, where in the world are you watching this story from? And if you believe that stories of kindness, everyday miracles, and ordinary people deserve to be shared even farther, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any journeys like this one. Because right after that question, a choice was made. And that choice changed 3 lives in ways none of them could have ever imagined. What did Daniel see that an entire medical system had overlooked? Daniel "Danny" Kowalski had spent nearly his entire life in the suburbs of San Diego, inside a small garage wedged between an aging industrial zone, where the smells of motor oil, hot metal, and salty ocean air blended together every single day. The concrete walls had cracked with time. The old scarred tools had passed through his hands for decades. Yet it was within this makeshift space that Danny's hands quietly created things many people would call miraculous. Customers trusted Danny not because he had prestigious diplomas hanging on the wall. They trusted him because he never lied, never overcharged, and never turned his back on people who were struggling. But there was one thing very few people knew. Danny carried a wound that had never truly healed. 12 years earlier, his younger brother, Miguel Kowalski, 22 years old, brilliant and full of promise, was in his final year of aerospace engineering at UC San Diego. Miguel loved the sky, loved motion, and especially loved the ocean. One weekend afternoon, he went scuba diving with friends at La Jolla Cove. The accident happened so fast no one could react. A violent collision with submerged rocks after diving too deep, and Miguel's spine was severely damaged. Danny still remembered the phone call from the hospital with painful clarity. The doctor's voice was cold, devoid of emotion. "Your brother will never walk again. A T6 spinal cord injury. Paralysis from the chest down." At that time, Danny was only 26 years old. He had just lost his wife to complications after giving birth to baby Zoe. Alone, carrying his newborn daughter, working 3 shifts a day, racing against hospital bills and mounting debt, Danny was already barely holding on. When the doctors proposed an experimental surgery that could give Miguel a chance to walk again, the cost reaching $350,000, Danny knocked on every door he could find. He borrowed money. He begged. He bowed his head. But it was not enough. It was never enough. Miguel was the first to say stop. He looked at his older brother and smiled, even though the pain was unmistakable in his eyes. "You still have Zoe to take care of." "I'll be fine, brother. I'll be okay." That brave smile. Danny knew he would carry it with him for the rest of his life. 5 years later, Miguel passed away due to pulmonary complications. In the stark white hospital room, he gripped his brother's hand tightly, his breath broken and shallow. "Promise me, if you ever get the chance, help people like me. Don't let them lose hope, the way I once did." From that day on, every night after Zoe had fallen asleep, Danny returned to the garage. Not to fix cars, but to learn. Old books on biomechanics, YouTube videos on orthopedic engineering, medical device schematics he painstakingly gathered piece by piece. Danny had no medical degree, but he had the hands of a gifted mechanic, and a promise to a brother who was gone. That small garage slowly became a silent laboratory. Danny studied artificial joints, weight distribution, the mechanics of human movement, like a perfectly engineered machine, yet heartbreakingly fragile. His wife was gone. His brother was gone. And Danny lived with the guilt that he had not been strong enough to save either of them. But he never gave up hope. Because deep in his heart, Danny believed that one day, when the opportunity appeared, he would keep his promise to Miguel. And it was from that very promise, from those long, silent nights inside the old garage, that Danny's fate quietly began to turn in a different direction. Not far away, also along the edge of the Pacific Ocean, also carrying a wound that would never fully close, there lived another mother. One whose world stood in complete contrast to Danny's. Alexandra Lexi Donovan was not an ordinary mother. She was the CEO of BioNova Technologies, California's leading biotechnology corporation, a pioneer in gene therapy and regenerative medicine. Lexi's name appeared on Forbes, at TED Talks, and at dozens of international scientific conferences. She was the embodiment of success, intellect, and power. But all that prestige could not erase one fateful night 11 years earlier. It was an August evening at Pacific Beach. The sky was clear, the breeze gentle, the waves rolling rhythmically onto the shore. Sienna, then only 8 years old, was learning to surf, her small but radiant passion. Lexi sat on the sand, phone in hand, handling an urgent email related to a deal worth $200 million. "Mom, look at me!" Sienna's excited voice rang out from the ocean. Lexi waved back, but did not lift her head. "I see you, sweetheart. Be careful." But she did not truly see. She was typing an email. That evening, the waves were stronger than usual. A sudden, powerful wave crashed in, Sienna lost her balance and fell into the water. The surfboard slammed violently into her head. By the time the lifeguards pulled Sienna onto the shore, she was unconscious. Blood streamed from the wound on her head, mixing with the bitter salt water. Traumatic brain injury, cervical spinal cord damage, an emergency surgery lasting 14 hours. Sienna survived, but from the chest down, there was no sensation. Lexi never forgot the moment she sat beside the hospital bed, watching her tiny daughter wake up. Sienna tried to move her legs, and nothing happened. Fear filled the child's eyes as they searched for her mother. "Mom? Why can't I feel my legs?" And there was a question Sienna did not say out loud, but Lexi read it clearly in her daughter's eyes. "Where were you when I got hurt?" From that day on, Lexi did the only thing she knew how to do: use money to fight fate. Millions of dollars were spent. The world's top specialists, from Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic, from Switzerland, from Japan, were brought in. 11 years passed, 11 surgeries, dozens of treatment programs, countless state-of-the-art orthopedic devices. But Sienna still could not walk. Her current brace, manufactured by OrthoCare Solutions, the world's leading orthopedic device company, cost $180,000. It was designed by a team of engineers from MIT, made from the lightest titanium alloy, and integrated with an AI sensor system that adjusted pressure according to body movement. On paper, it was a technological miracle, but in reality, every step Sienna took still hurt. She still wobbled. She still had to grit her teeth and endure the pain. Lexi knew her daughter was trying. Sienna never complained. She always smiled, always said, "I'm fine, Mom." But there were nights when Lexi passed by her daughter's room and heard soft sobbing behind the half-closed door. And on nights like that, Lexi would sit alone in her vast office, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean shimmering under the moonlight, the very ocean that had stolen her daughter's legs, and ask herself a question no scientific board could answer. Is there ever enough money to buy forgiveness? That Thursday morning, Danny was wiping the grease from his oil-stained hands after finishing repairs on the engine of an old Cessna, the prized possession of a retired pilot. Inside the small garage, San Diego sunlight slanted through the half-open roll-up door, illuminating the oil-stained concrete floor. Zoe, 7 years old, sat cross-legged on the garage floor, completely absorbed in her drawing. On the messy sheets of paper were airplanes, jagged gears, and strange machines that only a child's imagination could invent. "Dad?" Zoe looked up, holding a small mechanical puppet Danny had built for her by hand. "Why doesn't this joint rotate smoothly?" Danny knelt beside her and smiled patiently. "Because I haven't lubricated it enough, sweetheart," he said. "Machines are just like people. When a joint gets dry, movement becomes painful." At that exact moment, an unfamiliar sound filled the air. Not the usual mechanical noise of the industrial neighborhood, but a deep, smooth, luxurious engine sound, something that clearly did not belong here. Danny stood up, stepped outside, and froze. In front of him was a white Rolls-Royce Cullinan, gleaming and polished, reflecting the California sun like a mirror. The vehicle stood out so starkly it felt almost wrong. On a street lined with worn-out cars, where factory noise mixed with the cries of seagulls, its presence was like a slice torn from another world. The rear door opened. A young woman stepped out slowly and carefully, supported by metal braces tightly encasing her legs. Her long brown hair fell softly over her shoulders. Her features were delicate, but her eyes carried exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that comes from enduring too much for too long. Beside her stood a middle-aged woman, blonde hair neatly tied back, an immaculate white suit, a straight posture, and the sharp gaze of someone accustomed to running a multi-billion-dollar empire. Alexandra Donovan. Lexi scanned the old garage, skepticism mixed with desperation clearly written on her face. She did not want to be here, but the car's engine had overheated on Interstate 5, and the GPS had guided her to the nearest garage. This one. "Sorry to bother you," Lexi said, her voice polite but distant. "My car overheated. Could you take a look?" Danny nodded, wiping his hands on his shirt. "Of course. Let me check." He opened the hood and bent down to inspect the engine. But even as he tried to focus on the Rolls-Royce, his eyes kept drifting toward the young woman. Sienna was attempting to sit on an old wooden bench in front of the garage. The rigid braces made even the smallest movement difficult. She took a long time adjusting herself before finding a position that hurt a little less. Danny noticed immediately. It was a mechanic's instinct, an eye trained to spot mechanical misalignment in a split second. During the 15 minutes he spent checking the Rolls-Royce's engine, Danny glanced toward Sienna 6 times. Each time, he saw her shifting, trying to ease the pain, but the braces would not allow it. Finally, he could no longer stay silent. Danny walked over and knelt down at Sienna's eye level, not looking down at her the way so many people unconsciously do with someone who is disabled. His voice was gentle, careful. "Excuse me, I don't mean any disrespect, but your brace, could it be too tight?" Sienna blinked, stunned. No one had ever asked her that. People either stared, avoided her, or smothered her in suffocating sympathy. How did you know?" Sienna's voice trembled. "I'm not a doctor," Danny said honestly, "but I'm a mechanic. I can tell when something doesn't fit right. And this brace, it doesn't allow you to move naturally." Lexi immediately stood up, her eyes sharp with alarm. "What are you saying? That's a top-of-the-line medical device made by OrthoCare, the world's leading company." Danny didn't argue. He simply asked calmly, "May I take a closer look? Just look. I promise I won't touch anything without permission." Sienna looked at her mother. Then she nodded. Danny knelt down and asked for consent before touching the brace. His hands traced along the metal joints, checking angles, testing flexibility. His eyes narrowed. His fingers stopped at the knee joint. Then the hip. And he saw the problem. "This knee joint is fixed at a 15-degree angle," Danny said slowly, his tone serious. "But when a person walks naturally, the knee needs a range from 0 to 70 degrees. Because the joint is locked, every step you take, your knee can't bend. Your hip is forced to rotate about 20 degrees to compensate." He looked up at Sienna. "That's why you have chronic lower back pain, right?" Sienna's mouth fell open. "How do you know my back hurts?" Danny gestured to her posture. "You're leaning 7 degrees to the right. Your spine is adjusting to reduce pressure." "How long has this been happening?" 5 years, Sienna whispered, tears spilling over. "The doctors said it was a normal side effect. I thought I had to endure it." Lexi stood frozen. She had paid $180,000. She had trusted the finest minds from MIT. And now, a mechanic in an old garage had pointed out, in just 3 minutes, what dozens of specialists had never mentioned. "So you're saying," Lexi's voice shook, "it was designed wrong?" Danny let out a quiet sigh. "Not exactly wrong. They designed it for technology, for sensors, for appearance. But they forgot the most basic thing." He looked at Sienna. "They forgot how the human body actually moves." "So," Sienna gathered all her courage and asked, "Can you fix it?" Danny looked at her. In her eyes, he saw Miguel. He saw the promise he had made long ago. He saw a fragile hope he could not betray. "I don't know," Danny said softly. But I can try. That night, inside the $15 million oceanfront mansion in La Jolla, Lexi could not sleep. She stood silently before the wide-open window, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean, the ocean that had taken everything from her. Moonlight reflected across the surface of the water, shattering into cold fragments of light like broken glass scattered across the sea. Lexi remembered the night of the accident. She remembered the phone in her hand. She remembered Sienna's excited voice. "Mom, look at me!" And she remembered the moment she did not look up. For 11 years, Lexi had tried to buy forgiveness with money. The best doctors, the most expensive devices, the most advanced operating rooms, but all of it had failed. And now, a solitary man, dressed in oil-stained clothes, living in an old garage in the middle of an industrial district, was saying he could do what money could not buy. Lexi wanted to believe him, but she was afraid. Afraid that if he was wrong, Sienna could be permanently injured. Afraid because she had been disappointed too many times, so many that she no longer had the strength to endure another failure. And most of all, afraid that if a poor mechanic could do what her entire medical empire could not, then what had she wasted the past 11 years on? A soft knock sounded at the door. Sienna rolled into the room in her wheelchair, moving slowly. "You're not asleep yet, Mom." Her voice was gentle. Lexi turned around, hurriedly wiping away her tears. "I was thinking about the mechanic today." Sienna rolled closer. "You don't trust him, do you?" "It's not that I don't trust him," Lexi said quietly. "I'm afraid. If he's wrong, I'll still be the same as I am now," Sienna interrupted, her voice strangely calm. "Mom, I've lived like this for 11 years. I've had 11 surgeries. I've tried everything money can buy. And I still hurt. I still can't walk. I still feel like I'm a burden." "You are not a burden," Lexi broke down. "But I feel like one," Sienna said, tears streaming down her face. "Every time you look at me, I see guilt in your eyes. You keep trying to buy me a miracle. But miracles aren't something you can buy, Mom." Lexi knelt down and pulled her daughter tightly into her arms. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not looking up. I'm sorry for—" "Mom, stop apologizing." Sienna wrapped her arms around her, her voice trembling. "Let me try. This time, not because of money, not because of famous doctors, just because there's someone who truly wants to help me." Lexi said nothing, but her heart felt as though it were breaking apart, because for the first time she realized that for 11 years she had been trying to save her daughter not with love, but with money and power. And that had never been enough. The next morning, Lexi called Danny. Her voice trembled. "Mr. Kowalski, I want you to try, but on one condition." "Yes, please," Danny replied. "If there is any sign of danger, even the smallest, I will stop immediately. I cannot risk my daughter." "I understand," Danny answered without hesitation. "And I don't want to hurt her either. I promise I'll be absolutely careful." Lexi exhaled slowly. "Fine, but I will be there, every step, every decision." "Yes, ma'am," Danny said softly. "I just need you to trust me. One chance." And for the first time in 11 years, Lexi Donovan, a woman accustomed to controlling everything, chose to let go of control. She chose to place her trust in a stranger. Not because of credentials, not because of reputation, but because in that man's eyes, she saw something she had lost a long time ago. Genuine kindness. That morning, after Lexi and Sienna left, Danny carried the brace back into the garage as if he were holding a precious relic. He placed it on the old workbench, carefully wiping away every speck of dust, every scratch, as though he were touching something even more fragile than metal itself. Zoe sat beside him, her wide eyes following every movement her father made. "Dad, are you going to fix this so she can walk?" she asked. Danny stopped what he was doing. "I'm going to try, sweetheart." Zoe was quiet for a moment, then asked softly, "Like when you wanted to help Uncle Miguel?" Danny looked up at his daughter. His eyes darkened. Then he nodded. "Yes, like that." From that moment on, Danny began to dismantle the brace, the rigid metal joints, the straps that distributed pressure incorrectly, an expensive AI sensor system that was nearly meaningless once the human body actually moved. He redrew the entire design, calculated every angle, compared it to how a normal person walks, how the knee bends, how the hips rotate, how the ankle pushes force forward. The first night passed without him noticing. When the faint morning light crept into the garage, Danny was still sitting there, a technical pen in his hand. Zoe woke up and found her father slumped asleep at the workbench. The next day, the first prototype was born. Danny cut the weight by nearly half, increased the knee's range of motion, and added special padding at the contact points. When Sienna returned, Lexi came with her, her eyes so tense she never took them off her daughter for even a second. "Are you ready?" Danny asked quietly. Sienna nodded. "I'm ready." The new brace was fitted. Sienna stood up. In the first few seconds, she smiled. It really was lighter. It really was easier to breathe. But on the third step, a scream of pain tore through the garage. "Ah!" Sienna collapsed. Blood streamed from her ankle, where the metal joint had cut into her skin. Lexi screamed and rushed forward, pulling her daughter into her arms. "That's enough, Mr. Kowalski. Enough! I was wrong to trust you." Danny stood frozen. His hands trembled, covered in blood. In his mind, the image of Miguel on the hospital bed years ago came flooding back, along with the same unbearable helplessness. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His voice choked. Lexi helped Sienna into the car without another word, but just before the door closed, Sienna turned back and looked at Danny through her tears. "Don't give up." That night, the garage sank into darkness. The broken brace lay motionless on the table. Sienna's blood had not yet been wiped away. Danny sat alone, his phone in his hand, about to call Lexi to give up. His fingers trembled over the screen. Zoe hadn't only watched her father work endlessly, she had watched him change day by day. In the mornings, when her father woke before the sun, his eyes red from lack of sleep, Zoe quietly heated a cup of milk for him, even though her hands were still unsteady. "Drink it, Dad. You need your strength," she said, her voice serious like an adult's. Once, Danny picked her up and asked softly, "Are you scared? If Dad fails?" Zoe shook her head. "If you don't try, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Just like not being able to save Uncle Miguel." Danny held her tightly, unable to say a word. His 7-year-old daughter understood more deeply than many adults ever would. But there was one thing Zoe didn't tell her father. Every night, when she heard the sounds of hammers and drills echoing from the garage, she opened her small diary and wrote, "Dear God, please help Dad succeed. He's already lost Mom, lost Uncle Miguel. Please don't let him lose hope, too." And every morning, when she saw her father still trying, Zoe knew her prayer was being heard. "What are you doing, Dad?" Zoe's voice came from the doorway. Danny startled. You're not asleep yet?" Zoe walked over and sat beside him. "I saw you crying." Danny turned his face away. "I hurt someone, sweetheart. I thought I could help, but I only caused them more pain." Zoe was silent for a long time. Then she asked, "Did Uncle Miguel ever tell you to give up?" Danny felt as if he stopped breathing. I remember Uncle saying you should never give up on people who need help. Right, Dad? Danny pulled his daughter into his arms and broke down. You remember so well. Then don't give up. Sister Sienna still believes in you. At that moment, the phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Mr. Kowalski, this is Sienna. I'm sorry about my mom today. I'm okay. Please don't give up on me. I believe in you. Danny stared at the screen, tears falling. But this time, they were not tears of despair. They were tears of determination. He stood up, switched the lights back on in the garage, and reopened the design plans. Zoe, Dad will do it again. This time, Dad has to succeed. In the hours that followed, the second prototype was created. Danny changed the material, using aircraft-grade aluminum alloy. He wrapped all contact points in medical-grade silicone. He added shock-absorbing springs to the knee joint. The next morning, he called Lexi. Mrs. Donovan, I'm asking for one more chance. Lexi was silent for a long time. Are you sure? No, but I can't give up. When they arrived, Lexi was colder, but Sienna smiled at Danny, a smile so brave it made his heart ache. This time, Danny installed the brace more slowly, checking every detail. Sienna stood up. The first step, fine. The second step, fine. The third step. A scream erupted, even more violent than before. The hip joint shifted, pressing hard into the pelvis. Sienna collapsed. No! No! Lexi screamed. I won't allow this anymore. I'll sue you. You're hurting my daughter. She called her lawyer right in front of Danny. Everything fell apart. But as Lexi prepared to take Sienna away, the girl turned back, grabbed Danny's hand, and whispered through tears, Promise me, you won't give up. Danny couldn't speak. He only nodded. That night, Danny sat on the garage floor, his back against the icy wall. Miguel, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Then the memory returned, Miguel holding his hand, his voice weak. Don't apologize, just promise. Danny jumped to his feet, and then he saw it. The problem wasn't the joint. It wasn't the weight. It was the center of balance. Everything, from the original brace to both of his prototypes, had placed the center of balance wrong. They placed it at the knee. But when a human being walks, the true center of balance must be at the hip, Danny whispered. The center has to be at the hip. This time, he didn't fix it. He redesigned everything from scratch. In the days that followed, Danny disappeared from the world. The garage closed. Customers were turned away. Zoe brought food to her father and saw that he slept only 2 or 3 hours a night. Are you tired, Dad? She asked. I'm okay, sweetheart. I just need to finish this. Danny spent all $3,000 of his savings, the money he had set aside for Zoe's private school tuition next year, to buy the best materials. He tested the brace on his own legs, strapped it on, walked, fell, got up, adjusted it, tried again. The neighbors began to whisper, Danny's gone crazy. But Mrs. Maria, 70 years old, the woman who had known Miguel, said only, That boy is saving a life. Leave him alone. On the 7th day, Danny finished. The new brace looked nothing like anything before it. 60% lighter. Smooth joint movement. The center of balance fully shifted to the hips, distributing pressure evenly throughout the body. Danny stood still, staring at it, his hands trembling. Miguel, I've finished it. He closed his eyes. I hope, this time, I won't fail again. Danny stared at his phone for 20 long minutes before finally finding the courage to press call. The call connected. Mr. Kowalski. Lexi's voice came through, cold and distant. Mrs. Donovan. Danny took a deep breath. I've finished it. I know you no longer trust me, but I'm asking for one last chance. Just this once. If I fail, I won't trouble you again. I promise." On the other end of the line, there was a silence so long it was frightening. Finally, Lexi spoke. "Do you know, Mr. Kowalski, my lawyer is preparing a lawsuit against you. Twice. Twice my daughter was injured because of you." "I know." Danny's voice grew hoarse. "And I'm sorry. But I also know something else." He paused. "Sienna still believes in me. I receive messages from her every day. She asks me if I've given up." Lexi let out a quiet laugh, a laugh devoid of joy. "That's why I've gone crazy," she said. "My 19-year-old daughter is placing her entire life in the hands of a stranger, and I, a mother, am considering letting that happen." "You are a good mother," Danny said slowly. "You're just trying to protect your child." "No." Lexi's voice softened, heavy with pain. "A good mother wouldn't have been looking down at her phone 11 years ago. A good mother would have seen her daughter when she called out." Danny heard Lexi crying on the other end of the line. "Mr. Kowalski," she continued, her voice breaking, "for 11 years I've tried to buy forgiveness with money. But Sienna told me she doesn't need me to buy a miracle. She just needs me to believe." "Then believe in your daughter," Danny said gently, "and believe in hope." The next morning, Lexi and Sienna appeared in front of Danny's garage. But this time, they weren't alone. With them was Dr. Raymond Foster, California's leading orthopedic specialist, the man who had followed Sienna's case for the past 11 years. He came at Lexi's request with one clear purpose: to assess the level of risk. Dr. Foster looked Danny up and down, his gaze laced with skepticism and disdain. "You're a mechanic, correct?" "Yes, sir." "And you think you can do what a team from MIT and I could not?" he asked coldly. Danny didn't argue. "I just want to help." Dr. Foster scoffed. "I hope you know what you're doing, because if Miss Sienna is injured again, you'll be facing a very serious lawsuit." Danny nodded. "I understand." The doctor bent down to examine the new brace, his brows furrowed. "This center of balance system does not follow medical standards." "But it follows mechanical principles," Danny replied calmly. "And humans move according to mechanics, not textbooks." Dr. Foster was about to argue, but stopped himself. While Danny prepared, the doctor stood in the corner of the garage, observing every detail. He didn't want to be here. He had strongly opposed Lexi's request. But as a physician with 30 years of experience, he couldn't deny one fact. This brace was different. He had examined it earlier. The balance system, the force distribution, the flexibility of the joints. Everything contradicted what he had been taught. Yet, from a mechanical standpoint, it was flawless. "Mr. Kowalski," Dr. Foster said, his tone serious, "if this works, do you understand what it means?" Danny looked up. "It means she can walk." "No," Dr. Foster shook his head. "It means you will change an entire field of medicine, and there will be many people who won't like that." Danny was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "I don't care whether they like it or not. I only care about her." Dr. Foster looked at the man before him. No degrees, no prestige, but possessing something he himself had long lost in medicine: absolute focus on the patient. For the first time in many years, Dr. Foster secretly hoped he was about to witness a miracle. At that moment, Sienna spoke. "Dr. Foster, I want to try, please." He turned to look at her and let out a long, deep breath. "All right, but I will stand here. If there is any sign of danger—" "I'll stop immediately," Danny said firmly. "I promise." The air inside the garage seemed to freeze. The final attempt began. The entire garage fell into silence. Not an empty silence, but one so taut that every heartbeat inside every chest could be heard. Danny knelt in front of Sienna, lifting the new brace. His eyes met the young woman's. No words were needed. Between them, a silent promise had already been made. "Are you ready?" he asked. Sienna nodded, her hand gripping her mother's tightly. Danny began fitting the brace. This time every movement was slow and absolutely gentle. He checked every strap, every joint, every contact point, as if a single misalignment could shatter the miracle itself. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Light," Sienna whispered. "Much lighter." Danny stood up and extended his hand, then stopped halfway. "I won't hold you. I'll only be here if you need me. But you have to stand on your own. Is that okay?" Sienna took a deep breath. Then, slowly, she stood up. The first second, her body didn't shake. The second second, she was still standing. The third second, Sienna suddenly realized something that froze her entire body. "Mom!" Her voice trembled. I don't hurt." Lexi raised her hand to cover her mouth. Tears spilled out before she could stop them. Dr. Foster narrowed his eyes, leaning in to observe every detail. "It's not that the pain is reduced," Sienna whispered, as if afraid that speaking too loudly would make the moment vanish. "It's that there is no pain. For the first time in 11 years, I feel no pain." She held her breath. Her heart pounded as if it would burst from her chest. Her entire body trembled, not from pain, but from an emotion too large, too sudden to contain. Danny spoke very softly. "Let your body trust the support. The brace will carry the weight. You just need to move." Sienna nodded. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. She looked down at her right foot. She tried to move her toes. No sensation, just as it had been for 11 years. But the brace responded instantly, gently, naturally. She shifted her weight. The first step. Her foot touched the ground. No pain. Her knee bent. 20 degrees, 30, 40. Smoothly, like a normal person's. No pain. Sienna gasped, her voice breaking. "Mom, I'm... The second step. Her left foot. She shifted her weight. Her hip rotated naturally, no longer forced to twist 20 degrees to compensate. The brace distributed the pressure evenly across her body. No pain. Her knees trembled, not from weakness, but from emotion. 11 years. 11 years of pain, helplessness, despair. And now, the third step. The fourth step. Sienna could no longer hold it in. She burst into sobs, yet she kept walking. "Mom! Mom! I'm walking! I'm really walking!" Lexi collapsed onto the garage floor. Her hands shook violently as she covered her face, sobbing like a child. 11 years of guilt. 11 years of self-torment. 11 years of trying to buy a miracle with money. And the miracle had finally arrived. Not from wealth, but from the hands of a lonely father in an old garage. Sienna kept walking, one step at a time, steadier. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. She turned to look at Danny, her face soaked with tears yet glowing with an indescribable radiance. You did it! You did it!" Danny stood there, both hands gripping the edge of the workbench. He couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his grease-stained face. In that moment, he saw Miguel. He saw his brother in Sienna. And this time, he had not failed. Dr. Foster stood frozen. His mouth hung open. He stepped forward, examining the way Sienna moved, the joint angles, her posture. "Unbelievable," he whispered. "This center of balance system. It's absolutely genius." But no one heard him. Because Sienna was running, actually running, toward her mother. Lexi sprang to her feet and opened her arms wide, and for the first time in 11 years, mother and daughter embraced while standing. Not in a wheelchair, not on a hospital bed, but standing. Two women holding each other tightly, crying like children. "I'm sorry, Mom," Lexi sobbed. "Stop apologizing, Mom," Sienna whispered. "You didn't give up on me. You gave me this chance." They both turned to look at Danny, a poor, single man, his hands stained with oil, standing there crying without a sound. Lexi walked over without hesitation and wrapped her arms tightly around him. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up." Danny nodded, his voice breaking. "I promised my brother that I would never give up on people who need help." At that moment, Zoe ran into the garage, clapping her hands and cheering, "She can walk! Dad did it!" Sienna knelt down, hugged Zoe, and smiled through her tears. "You have an incredible dad." Outside the garage, neighbors had gathered in a crowd. Some clapped, some cried. All of them were witnessing a miracle being born right before their eyes. In the hours that followed, Danny's garage became a gathering place for the entire neighborhood. The neighbors, who had seen Danny quietly endure hardship day after day, who had watched him raise Zoe alone, who had heard him cry at night after Miguel died, now embraced him, cried with him, as if this miracle belonged to all of them. Mr. Martinez, the retired welder, said with a trembling voice, "Danny, do you know what you've done? You've given all of us faith that ordinary people can still do extraordinary things." Lisa, the owner of the corner grocery store, wiped her tears. "My son has had cerebral palsy since he was little. I gave up hope. But today, Danny, can you help my son?" Danny looked at the hopeful faces surrounding him. He hadn't prepared for this. He had only wanted to help one person. But now, an entire community was placing its faith in him. And in his heart, Miguel seemed to whisper, "See, you've done more than you ever thought you could." 70-year-old Mrs. Maria, tears streaming down her face, called out, "Miguel, do you see it? Your brother did it." 2 weeks later, Sienna was walking steadily. Every day she trained with Danny in that old garage. Each step grew a little more confident. No more sudden stabbing pain. No more fear each time she shifted her weight onto her legs. There was only sweat, focus, and a growing sense of trust, building with every step. The story began to spread, not through press releases or glossy articles, but through the stunned looks of other patients in hospitals when they saw Sienna walking. Word passed from one person to another. A girl who had been in a wheelchair for 11 years was now moving on her own 2 legs. But the glory did not last long. One morning, Danny received an official letter from OrthoCare Solutions, the company that manufactured Sienna's original brace. The envelope was thick, the paper stark and cold. He opened the letter. His hands trembled as he read each line. Legal notice. Dear Mr. Daniel Kowalski, we have been informed that you have unlawfully modified an OrthoCare Model X7 medical device without a medical or biomedical engineering license. This action violates FDA regulations governing Class II medical devices. We hereby demand that you immediately cease all activities related to medical devices. Failure to comply will result in civil and criminal legal action. Response deadline, 7 days. Danny sank into a chair. The letter slipped from his hand. "Are they going to sue you, Dad?" Zoe asked, her voice trembling. "Maybe," Danny replied softly. "Very likely, sweetheart." The news spread quickly, and this time it wasn't just one company. The California Orthopedic Association also issued an official statement, cautious but firm in tone. They said that while they sympathized with Sienna Donovan's case, a person without medical credentials modifying a medical device was dangerous and unlawful, and they urged authorities to intervene. Pressure mounted on Dr. Foster, the doctor who had witnessed Sienna walk with his own eyes. He called Lexi, his voice noticeably heavier. "Mrs. Donovan, I am truly happy for Sienna, but I cannot publicly support Mr. Kowalski. If I do, I will lose my medical license." Lexi understood, but she did not accept it. She organized a press conference. In front of dozens of reporters and cameras pointed straight ahead, Sienna stepped out, walked out, without a wheelchair. The entire room froze for several seconds. The murmurs stopped cold. Lexi stood at the microphone, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "For 11 years, I spent millions of dollars on the best experts in the world. They could not help my daughter. But a single father, working in an old garage, did what money could not buy. And now, you want to sue him?" A reporter raised his hand. "But ma'am, aren't you concerned that he has no medical credentials?" Lexi looked straight into the camera. "Credentials did not make my daughter walk. Mr. Kowalski's heart and talent did." Sienna stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear and resolute. "My name is Sienna Donovan. For 11 years, I lived in pain. Not because I lacked money, but because people with credentials forgot that I am a human being, not an engineering project. Danny treated me like a human being, and he gave me my life back." The press conference video went viral at lightning speed. Millions of views in just a few days. Social media erupted. Some called Danny a living miracle, saying the medical system had drifted too far from patients, too focused on procedures and profit. They shared Sienna's story as proof that genuine kindness and true talent still had a place. But there were also many voices of opposition. Some warned that Danny was playing a dangerous game, that a single small mistake could cost Sienna her life. They reminded everyone that laws exist not to block miracles, but to prevent disasters. Danny's story was no longer just his own. It became a larger debate between law and compassion, between standards and humanity, between protecting a system and saving a life. And at the center of it all, Danny Kowalski, a poor mechanic, stood before the biggest choice of his life. 1 week later, Lexi returned to the garage. She stood in front of Danny for a long time, as if trying to memorize every detail of the man who had changed her daughter's life. "Mr. Kowalski," she said, her voice low but resolute, "I want to hire the best legal team to protect you. I'll cover all the costs." Danny shook his head immediately. "No, Mrs. Donovan, if I accept, everything will only get louder. The scandal will grow. Other patients will become afraid, and they'll no longer dare to trust me." Lexi frowned. "Then what are you going to do? Sit back and let them sue you?" "I'll take responsibility for what I've done," Danny replied, his voice strangely calm. "But I won't apologize for helping Sienna." Lexi looked at him, tears welling up. "Why?" she asked, almost pleading. "Why do you have to sacrifice like this?" Danny smiled, a sad but steadfast smile. "Because I promised my brother, and I will never betray that promise." That night, after most of the lights in the garage had been turned off, a stranger appeared. She introduced herself as Dr. Victoria Morgan, a professor of biomedical engineering at Stanford, one of the world's leading experts in orthopedic devices. She came with only one request: "I want to see the brace." Danny handed it to her. Dr. Morgan said nothing. She examined it for 30 minutes in complete silence, rotating each joint, observing every point of force distribution, making quick notes in her notebook. Finally, she looked up at Danny. "You're self-taught?" "Yes, I am." No one taught you about dynamic center of balance distribution? No, Danny shook his head. I researched it myself. Dr. Morgan removed her glasses and wiped tears from her eyes, an action that left Danny stunned. Genius, she said softly. You are an untrained genius. She paused for a moment, then continued, I will testify for you. I will tell the FDA that this design surpasses everything currently on the market. Danny couldn't believe his ears. But your colleagues will oppose you. You could? I don't care, Dr. Morgan cut in. In 30 years of this profession, I've never seen anyone understand the mechanics of the human body the way you do. If the medical system sues you, then it is suing progress. The following week, Dr. Victoria Morgan appeared at the FDA hearing. Before the expert panel, she presented her case clearly and methodically. Mr. Daniel Kowalski's design is not only safe, it is more advanced than existing orthopedic devices. I propose that the FDA grant a special license, allowing Mr. Kowalski to continue designing under my direct supervision. OrthoCare objected fiercely, but when the FDA directly examined the brace, measuring, testing, and analyzing, it was forced to acknowledge an undeniable truth. It was genuinely better. 2 months later, Danny received a letter from the FDA. He opened it, his hands trembling. Special license. Mr. Daniel Kowalski is authorized to design orthopedic devices under the supervision of Dr. Victoria Morgan. Term, 2 years, for the purpose of completing an official biomedical engineering certification. Danny sat down. The letter slipped from his hand. Tears streamed down his face. Miguel, he whispered, I did it. I kept my promise. 1 year later, Kowalski Mobility Solutions, a rehabilitation engineering center founded by Danny with the quiet backing of Lexi, officially opened its doors in San Diego. The building was not luxurious. There were no flashy signs. But inside, it was filled with light, fully equipped, and, above all, brimming with hope. At the entrance stood a simple plaque, Kowalski Mobility Solutions, Making Hope Walk Again. Dedicated to Miguel Kowalski, 1988 to 2013. On opening day, dozens of families lined up early in the morning. Children in wheelchairs. Adults wearing braces worn thin by years of use. Elderly people carrying eyes that had nearly given up hope. Danny greeted each person one by one. He did not stand on a raised platform. He knelt down at eye level with them and always began with the same question. Can you show me how you're able to walk right now? Sienna was there too. She had become a physical therapy assistant and was in her final year studying rehabilitation science at UC San Diego. She welcomed families warmly, patiently sharing her story. Not to boast of a miracle, but to show them that miracles are real, if we do not give up. Zoe, now 8 years old, helped her father in the workshop. She drew naive designs, learned how to hold tools, and always asked the same question. Dad, would Uncle Miguel be proud of you? Danny pulled his daughter into his arms, tears falling. He would be very proud, sweetheart. Dr. Victoria Morgan became the center's scientific advisor. She taught Danny formal biomedical engineering knowledge and at the same time learned from him something no classroom could teach: mechanical intuition grounded in real human bodies. Lexi changed as well. She was no longer the cold CEO who lived only in boardrooms. She spent more time with Sienna. Mother and daughter often walked along Pacific Beach, the place that had once taken everything, now the place where they found each other again. One afternoon, gentle waves lapped at their feet. Mom, Sienna said softly, I don't resent you for that night. Not ever. Lexi broke down in tears. But if I had looked up, then I still could have been hurt, Sienna smiled. Mom, the accident was caused by the ocean, not by you. Please stop punishing yourself. They embraced, tears blending with the sound of the waves. 6 months later, a 10-year-old boy named Ethan was brought to the center, paralyzed since birth. A poor family. No money for any kind of device. Danny looked at the boy and smiled gently. Hi, I'll help you walk. For free. Don't worry. The boy burst into tears. His mother knelt down in gratitude. Danny shook his head. Don't thank me. Thank the one who taught me. Never to give up. He looked up at the sky and whispered, Miguel, I miss you. 2 years later, Danny completed his biomedical engineering certification. He became the first person in history to be licensed based on practical genius, rather than the traditional academic path. Kowalski Mobility Solutions had helped more than 300 patients. 80% of them learned to walk again. The story spread across California, then the entire country. But Danny never forgot his roots. The old garage was still there. He still repaired aircraft engines. He still lived simply, because he did not do this for money or fame. He did it for a promise. A California sunset stretched across Pacific Beach. Danny, Zoe, Lexi, and Sienna sat on the sand, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Sienna stood up. She stepped into the waves, for the first time in 13 years, letting the seawater touch her legs. She laughed, shouting like a child, Mom, I can feel the water. Lexi ran toward her. Mother and daughter stood in the surf, holding each other tightly and crying. Danny watched them and smiled. Zoe looked up and asked, Dad, are you happy? Very happy, sweetheart. Because you kept your promise to Uncle Miguel? Danny nodded, tears streaming down his face. Yes, and I will keep it. Forever. In the California sunset sky, the final rays of sunlight shone down like a blessing. This is not just a story about a single father, a billionaire burdened by guilt, or a brave young woman. This is a story about the simplest thing and the most profound. Kindness can change the world, one step at a time. Miracles do not come from money. Miracles come from hands that never give up. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue walking alongside stories of hope, redemption, and everyday miracles. And turn on notifications, because perhaps the next story will be exactly what you need to hear today. See you again on another journey.